All right, I want to welcome everybody to our continuing series that we've been doing with various professionals in all different areas of society. And let me turn this on mute. I want to welcome Dr. Rachel Frye with us this afternoon. Good afternoon, Rachel.
Good afternoon.
It's good to see you, and I appreciate you having a few minutes to share some time with us.
Absolutely.
For those of you who haven't joined in our series or unfamiliar, what we're doing is we're having a series of conversations on Mondays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. Central with people in different segments of society. And Dr. Rachel Frye is a licensed clinical psychologist here in Birmingham, has a very active practice. And what we're going to talk about is maintaining your mental health, keeping healthy mentally during the pandemic. And I don't like to use this phrase, but I seem to use it every week. The new normal and what that is for everyone else. For each person, it seems to be a little bit different. We all have our routines. We're all set in our ways. We probably enjoy most of that, but all of that has been completely turned upside down in the last 2 months. And that's why I brought Dr. Frye on to speak with us for the next 30 minutes or so. And we're going to just chat through a bunch of different topics. But Rachel, if you would, please share a little bit about yourself professionally, and then we'll just jump into this.
Sure. I'm a psychologist, as Bernard said, and I have been practicing for about 14 years and in my private practice. And throughout that, have seen a lot of different people and individuals, but I'll have kind of specialized in couples counseling and individual therapy with people, adolescents and adults. And while I kind of have a general practice, I also do a lot of legal wellness. So I do a lot of work with law firms and bar associations and law schools and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's just kind of it in a nutshell. And in terms of my practice.
Well, I'm so thankful that you've got some time to share with us today, because the more you read, the more you see in the news. It's there's not lots of good information out there, and with us being in your face with the news and everything else society, it's hard to get away from things. And I just had a feeling that just communicating with the own people in my world, there's just a change of mindset for most people. And I think it would be very difficult for people to maintain their old mindset, considering we can't go anywhere and things are just ever evolving. So, if you would, Rachel, share with us a little bit about the overall sense that you get in your practice in your daily life of what you're seeing with the mentality change of people, and how maybe we'll just start with a little bit of strategies from an overall standpoint, maybe the bird's eye view, and then we'll kind of taper it down a little bit as we go.
Sure. Well, I would say what I'm seeing is kind of a spectrum. So I've got some people that I'm seeing they're feeling a little bit less anxious, and maybe they realized that the world was too fast paced and there was too much going on in their lives. And I've had people describe it as, running on the treadmill and trying to figure out how to kind of slow down and using this time as like, how do I want my life to be moving forward? What changes do I want to make? And that kind of thing. And I've also seen people that were already struggling with depression and anxiety, and that's just gotten intensified by the news, and that kind of thing. And the uncertainty has just kind of kicked that into high gear. And I guess what I would say, just kind of overall, as I think I've kind of generally been pleasantly surprised at kind of the resiliency that I've seen with most of the people that I work with. So it's kind of acknowledging that this is all stressful and that there may be good days and bad days, but kind of what they're doing with it and the ability to push on has been pretty cool to see.
It's and there's going to be a lot of good that comes out of this in many areas of society and many areas of life. And I think we're trying to define what those things are, and maybe 6 months to a year from now, we look back and we say, oh, well, here's some of the way things have changed. But what hasn't changed is the fact that people in their daily lives have stress. And forgive me, because I'm about to butcher what I'm going to tell you, but this is my perspective, and I am not clinically or medically trained whatsoever. To me, there's two types of stress. There's the stress that's in the back of my head. Those are the big picture things. Are my kids okay? How's my health? Am I financially okay? Is my business doing all right? Those are the big picture things overall. Mm-hmm. In the front of my head are the daily stresses, and those are much smaller for the most part for me. What am I having for lunch? Is my meeting going to show up? Is my client going to show up on time? What's the judge going to rule? Those are the daily things. So to me, those things are always there in one way or another, and how you deal with those, I think, is all dependent on your approach to life. Yes. Now, forgive me for stepping on years of training that you've had, but that's the way I see things on a daily life. But now that we're in this pandemic, now that we're learning more and more about the disease and how the world is treating it, front of the head or back of the head stress, all of that gets ramped up for everybody for the most part.
Yes.
And stop me now where I've misspoken, but that's just Bernard. That's just me and how I deal with things. Mm-hmm. But from a standpoint of what do I do and how do I deal with this, maybe some daily and or big picture ideas for people on how to cope with all of this. Because a lot of things you can control, but there's a whole lot of things you can't control.
Yeah.
And so maybe I'll leave it with you with that. How do we deal with what we can and what we can't control?
Oh, I think that's a great question. And I think, to your point, there are those back and front things. And I think having some normalcy, having whatever normalcy you can right now. And this can be things that you are always doing. Like getting up and exercising every morning at 6 o'clock, or, sitting and having coffee before you go into work, or going, to fill up your gas if you're going somewhere else, or whatever those normal things are. It can also be, and one thing I've kind of found with our family is that we've developed these new normal things during the pandemic. So they may be kind of silly or crazy to someone else on the outside looking in, but they're kind of things we've come up with. Okay, every day we're going to do this, or we're going to, find a fun movie to watch tonight. And so trying to figure out what things you can kind of integrate in alongside the things that were existing before, and a lot of things have changed. So for example, my gym now does Zoom workouts. So instead of driving 20 minutes to get to the gym, I've now got my weights in the front yard, and people are walking by, in the morning, and there I am. They're cheering us on and they're pushing us. And so I think integrating whatever you can. I think having a schedule is super important, and not a super strict schedule, but just something with I kind of have a sense of where the day is going. Because it's very easy, right, to wake up and be in your pajamas and be hanging out and then realize it's 11:30 and kind of get into that mode. So I think really trying to get into some, if you're working from home, some sort of working clothes outfit, whatever that is for you.
Oh, actually changing out of your pajamas.
Changing out of your pajamas, yes. I think it's important. And being able to switch out later on. And if your kids can't quite get to that point, that's okay. Being able to kind of let go in some areas, but figuring out what works for you. One of my kids had chocolate cake for breakfast this morning. Yes. That's not something we would normally do, but I was like, we're in a pandemic and we have chocolate cake and I need to get on a call. So, yeah.
Well, I haven't met that child, but I already like that child. Well, let me throw this to you. Having a schedule in the best of times can be stressful, but it can also kind of monitor and lead you on your path in a given day or a given time period. And it works for me. I know when the days that I don't have deadlines, I don't have things I need to go to, it's harder to get my work done that I really should be getting done. But here's my thought to you, or my question. Mm-hmm. We're 7 to 8 weeks into the pandemic. Yes. So the world has changed since early March. And it just seems like as we were learning new things that were evolving and new laws were coming into place, new medical information is being disseminated to the public, it seems like we're going through various stages of this. For me and my family, personally, I can't speak for others, but we've kind of settled into our routine for the most part. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about that because it seemed like everybody, your hair was on fire trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do? How do I do it? How do I be safe? Now we're learning those things. So are you seeing an evolution of how people are dealing with the pandemic in their daily lives?
Absolutely. And I think initially a vacation might be a stretch, but I think when everybody found out the first 2 or 3 weeks, it was kind of like, oh, this might be kind of nice to work from home, or to be able to kind of have a break from things. And then when we started realizing this is going to be a minute, people kind of went into this next phase of, I don't know about this. And I would say kind of in the acceptance phase of that. And then now I think people are starting to get a little fatigued even from the acceptance, and are just wondering, okay, how long are we going to have to do this, right? And maybe even pushing ahead to summer. And most of us are getting emails about summer camps being canceled and those kinds of things. And then it's easy to push into the fall. One of my son's teachers has already said the fall is going to be very different at school. So I do think there's kind of these iterations, and we kind of go back and forth with them. But I think, again, I do think people are more resilient than, I think we all are, more than we realize. But I do sense and see a little bit of a struggle right now with, I can do this, but how long are we going to have to do it?
Yeah, I at least personally, and again, I can only speak for my experiences, but it seems everything that was on being planned in the spring, obviously all that got canceled or pushed back, family events, vacations, spring break, etc. And now folks are a little bit, in my family, well, when can we schedule our beach trip? When can we schedule the next big event that we want to go do? Because we all look forward in my family to having things on the calendar that we're looking forward to. And we always make we have a family trip on X date. Well, what are we doing to prepare for it? Well, that's all kind of been tampered down for the most part. But what type of strategies do you think from that standpoint, when can we start? And I'm not trying to ask you to look into the crystal ball and be able to predict the future.
Right.
But I also know that some patience has got to be involved in this. But you're also anticipating it. That's a push-pull. That's a hard mental game right there. I want to put things on the calendar, but
sure.
When and how? So what kind of strategies, what kind of thoughts do you have about looking forward to the future events?
Well, I would say first coming back into the present and really focusing on, we really don't know what the future holds. And that's scary and also not scary, because it could be good or it could be bad, or it could be somewhere in the middle, which is personally where I think we're going to be. And maybe it's a little bit back and forth. But I think coming back into the present and centering in and focusing on what you're doing that day, that week, but even sometimes a week seems too much, right? I think that day, that hour, I'm eating breakfast or I'm preparing for dinner, just trying to bring it back in. I think it's also important to have to create some things to look forward to. I mean, one of the things we've been doing is trying to decide each week, okay, what nicer restaurant are we going to order takeout from this week? And it kind of is twofold, because it makes us feel like we're helping the restaurant because they're not able to open their doors. But it also is, it's something we look forward to as a family. We love going out to eat together. We love cooking together and those kinds of things. And so it's kind of Friday hits and we start talking about what's the restaurant going to be, or restaurants. So I think finding whatever that might be that you can look forward to, that you can plan, because a lot of things we just simply can't right now. or we can, but they may have to get canceled.
Well, we've been as a family trying to get together in socially acceptable spacing, like in driveways, at least once a week. We get on Zoom calls, probably like the rest of the world does, with some frequency. But I wanted to share with you, and the rest of my family's not going to be happy with me, but I'm going to share with you something that we did last week that was, everybody was just shaking their head because they know that I'm the one who's going to make them do it. We got together as a family and we had a themed dinner. Everyone had to dress in sports related attire, whether it was costumes, uniforms, or whatever it is. So if I do this right, I'm getting ready to share with you the video that we made that really was, it wasn't a lot of effort, but it was a lot of fun. And, let me see if I can do this real quick. Okay, let me go back. Let's see if we can get it going. All right. I hope you were able to see that video, but we had most everybody in person. We had our middle brother Rob and his family in Virginia, and we were on a Zoom call with them for a while. They made their video, sent it to us. We put it all together. But nice. That's just one of the things that we have done as a family, just to break up the monotony, still be able to get together and do some fun things like that. So I just wanted to share a little bit about that, just something that we've come up with and done that just makes the fact that we're all in this weird space and place right now, made it just a little bit more fun for us all.
Yep, and I think humor is key right now, right? Wherever you can find it and wherever you can create it, it's good. It's a good thing.
It is a good thing. And guys, for those of you just joining us or may watch us later, we're talking with Dr. Rachel Frye here in Birmingham. We're talking, the issue is one of a very important topic, and that's why I wanted Dr. Frye to join us, about maintaining your mental health during the pandemic. And everybody's mental makeup is different, and what may work for me may not work for you. So please don't, anything that I have shared for what we're doing, don't just necessarily assume it's going to work for you. But Rachel, one of the topics I have talked about in the past with other healthcare providers is telemedicine. Are you able to provide some sort of virtual counseling and things? How does that work for your practice?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I've been doing all telemedicine, and I usually am just giving people the option to do phone or video. Mm-hmm. And I would say most people want to do the video. I think it feels more connected. Mm-hmm. And it's been good. I think people have really liked it. And I've noticed too, especially some of my clients that live alone and some of my older clients really, they've learned how to do this technology now, and they really want to do those videos, and I think probably look forward to them.
I'm sure they do, and it sounds like the mail person may be near your house. I hear the dog.
Probably.
Mail call. Let me ask you about this. The world has gone online from a video, audio standpoint. Zoom, Blue Jeans, there's hundreds of companies that do this. But I've also read recently about, and this is a term I think I may have read, called Zoom fatigue. And just, at least for me, most of my work during the day are discussions online like this from an audio video standpoint. But to the average person who doesn't have that as part of their world, now they're being thrust into it. Mm-hmm. How can we back away? And it doesn't just have to be Zoom fatigue. It can be social media fatigue, for that matter, with all the news that's going on. What are some thoughts about how people can reset themselves, recharge themselves, and not just get so overwhelmed with that type of fatigue?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one way is to get outside, and um, to be able to break it up. I think when you're actually on a call, I've noticed there's a lot more people that are putting up the screen instead of showing their face because they're just over it. They're so tired of Zoom. And it can be a lot when you're looking at a gallery of 20 people and 20 people are looking at you. And most of us don't like looking at ourselves on a screen. And so I think sometimes it's being on a phone call, and just being able to kind of recognize when you're feeling that fatigue. And but I think personally, just getting outside a lot of the time and trying to break it up during the day where you're not in a stretch where you're either on social media for a long time at any given point, or you don't have back-to-back Zoom calls, and trying to break those up with, even if it's going to unload the dishwasher or put laundry in, or help a child with some schoolwork, whatever it might be, but being mindful, especially on social media, because I think that's where people really, they start kind of looking and see what everybody's doing, and it can start breeding negative energy and feeling.
I think the world is craving for good news. The world has got to be craving for feel good stories. John Krasinski's SGN has just been phenomenal. I don't know if you've seen this, his online show that he's been doing lately, where he focuses on the good in the world. Like he hosted an online prom. I mean, just awesome things like that. But I think it is so important that you take those breaks, because like anything else, you can get so bogged down. I mean, I can have three, not online and Facebook, but online calls like this with lawyers or judges or even clients. But my gosh, it's so draining, because not only are you listening, but now you got to visually pay attention, and maybe you're taking notes. So it does help to get outside. I love to get outside like everybody else, and I'm encouraged by seeing so many people who are out. It's got to be a good mental break for you to be able to just break that routine, even if it's for a few minutes. It just seems so important.
Yeah, and it makes me think about, I took a long walk with my 10-year-old last night, and she looked at me and said, "Why don't we do this normally?" Which I've had a lot of thoughts about. And I said, well, because we're going to soccer, or we're going to dance, or we're going to voice lessons. But we should try to do this when we get back into, normal, whatever our new normal is.
Well, it's maybe this is helping us to learn we need to slow down a little bit in certain phases of life. And maybe that's not a bad thing. My children are a little bit older than yours, so I've kind of been through those years of, holy smokes, we're in the car from 5 till 7:30 at night. Where am I getting dinner from? And I still have work I got to do before I crash myself. But it seems that scheduling, the new type of scheduling, like your child had chocolate cake in the middle of the for breakfast. Not that that's going to be the new norm, but boy, that'd be a good thought. But let's put that crystal ball back up and kind of play with this for just a second. Let's say we're getting into the fall, we're into August, and schools have now put into place the new way that they're going to have school, assuming that the children can go back into the schools, the physical schools. There's going to have to be a lot of adaptation and change. And a lot of people don't like change of routine. That makes it comfortable in life. Right. But how can parents start preparing their children now for what may be changes in the fall? Again, we're just assuming that there's going to be changes. We're assuming for this discussion that it's not going to be just online schooling.
Right.
Hopefully the children can go back into the schools. Some may love it, some don't like it at all, but let's just predict for this few minutes, how can parents start preparing their children and themselves for the fall?
I think that's a great question. And I think one thing I see a lot with parents is they're afraid of sharing things with their children.
Mm-hmm.
And we probably have the opposite because we kind of talk about everything, good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, one of the things I've said to my children is, we don't know what this is going to be like until we have a vaccine. And so it may be a little bit like this off and on for a while, but we're going to get through it, and I think just reassuring them and being honest about it. And then I would also add just leaving space for them to be able to ask questions, and I try to check in with my kids. I mean, of course, my 12-year-old doesn't like that so much, but just, hey, how's everybody doing? What's going on? And sometimes they'll share stuff and sometimes they won't. And that's okay. But I think just reassuring them and yourself at the same time, I would add, right? Because we're telling our children to be calm, and we're feeling not only probably what they're feeling, but even more because we're parents. And so I think just it's okay to say to them, look, we're all kind of having to adapt to this. Nobody really knows what's going on. That would be kind of my.
Well, that's all sounds like very sound and reasonable approaches. I do have a topic as we get closer toward the end of our discussion, and I sure appreciate your time and your expertise. And for those of you watching and didn't hear me earlier, or you may already know, I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, football capital of the South, if not the United States. Now, Rachel, we've already missed spring practice.
Yeah.
There is a chance that people aren't going to be able to attend football games in the fall. And I'm predicting you're going to have an onslaught of new clients and patients that are going to need your counseling once they make some decisions in public. And I'm halfway giggling about this, but this is a very real thing in the Deep South, particularly Birmingham, Alabama.
Yes.
How are folks going to be able to deal without their usual sports that they need and that we crave in society, particularly where we don't have pro sports, but we have the next best thing? We've got college sports and SEC. How are people going to deal with that?
Well, I'm laughing because I've just renewed our tickets on Tide Pride this morning with thinking, am I getting this money back or is this going to the fall? I think, I don't know. I think we'll be adaptable, but this is a big deal. And I wonder if they're going to figure out other scenarios. I don't know what that looks like, but we've heard about, are there going to be games where no one's in the stadium and teams are just going to go out there and play? That's really hard for me to imagine. But I would think people in the South would much rather have that than not have any of it. It will be very interesting to see. And I know that that at least for Alabama, they've reassured everybody that they're going to be making a decision at some point and you will get your money back.
Well, they've already made, at least for Alabama and the University of Georgia this past week, where either the presidents or chancellors of the school have put public information out there, or they put out PR statements that school will be in session on campus in the fall. And I know there's many reasons why they have to do that, but what I think is going to be an interesting, smaller version of the can we come back into the stadium approach is, can we go back into the restaurants? Can we go back into other public gathering spaces? And maybe that helps, because from a mental standpoint, I'm certainly not ready to go sit into a restaurant.
Right.
Maybe there are others who are craving it and ready to go. And in due time, I'll get there.
Sure.
But maybe this is just me being a little more cautious than the average Joe. I don't know. But let's take it out of the football and stadium context and let's put it in the restaurant context, which is May 15th, at least in Alabama and in Birmingham particularly. Restaurants are going to be able to, on some level, host you in their restaurants. Now, I don't know what I would do if the guy sitting next to me who's not at my table, you know, I guess they're so many feet away, but if they start coughing, how am I going to deal with that? What are some thoughts about how the public can deal with that and not escalate it into something that ends up having to call the police or you know, creates a big scene?
I'm with you. I'm not comfortable to go to a restaurant right now, but I also know, and I think we've all seen the spectrum where everybody's falling on different ends of it. Mm-hmm. And I do think there are people that are very ready to get to a restaurant. Mm-hmm. And so I think I'm kind of the wait and see, right? Like I'm not going to judge anybody if they feel like they want to do that. But at the same time, I want to see how that goes for a little while before I feel comfortable about it. But I imagine, you know, just like we're seeing across the nation already, there will be tension within the restaurants or wherever it might be. And that's something certainly for the people that are running the restaurants to think about. But I think one of the hardest things about this, and you're touching on it, is just that we've never had to do this before. And we've never had to plan around something like this. So it's very foreign. And we don't know how we're going to respond because we've never had to do it.
Unfortunately, we've seen very unfortunate events where people have actually been killed. Mm-hmm. And people have been placed under custody and arrested and in jails just because emotions are right there on the edge, right on the cusp of what people are thinking. And I just hope that when people do go back, and this includes me and my people as well, when you go back into those public settings, you've got to have a little bit of patience and understanding. I had Will Haver, who we all know locally, was the proprietor of very popular restaurants, Taco Mama and Odie's. And he so eloquently explained how hard they're working to serve the public. Mm. And they're doing scenarios, he explained, for just this very issue. Somebody coughs or has an issue in their restaurant setting. How do you deal with it? How does this, but it's all areas of society, not just in restaurants. Right. I do see over your shoulder that you've got a four-legged friend socially distancing. Who is that?
That is Wilson.
Hello, Wilson, who's watching probably all the birds.
Yes.
But
his favorite spot.
Rachel, I've put a link to your website in the show notes. So if people want to reach out to you, is the best thing, would it be to go to the website, call you, email you? How should people reach out to you if they want to chat with you?
Yeah, email or calling me, either way is good for me.
Okay. Well, I could talk to you for the next 2 hours, but Wilson needs your attention, and we've got things we've got to do today. But I do want to thank you for your expertise, your time, most importantly, in helping us kind of work through some of these things.
Absolutely. Glad to.
Well, guys, again, as we try to twice a week, we're trying to bring you topics of interest. We've had so much outreach and people suggesting topics. So please, on Mondays and Thursdays at 1 p.m., we have a host of topics still to come all through the month of May, and we're going to start getting into June as well. So please let us know if there are other topics you want to hear from professionals and other areas of society. I hope everybody has a safe rest of your day. Do something that breaks up that mental drain or stress that you're on. But everybody, y'all be well. We'll talk to you again.